Welcome to the Pocahontas School District Special Board Meeting. I'm going to open it up for Dr. Arbuckle.
Okay, so we're going to jump right in. As far as I know, we didn't have anybody who requested to make any public comments. So we're going to go straight to the informational items. This is the last, I'd say the last week has been pretty eventful for schools across the nation, quite honestly. So I wanted to, I know funding is something that we talk a lot about. I wanted to just bring your attention and answer any questions that board members might have regarding the federal funding. And so middle of last week, we received information from DESE that they had gotten information from the Federal Department of Education that with all the changes to the federal DOE, with the direction that the most recent federal budget is going, that the language that they're using right now is, we have several of our title grants, they call them formula grants, so several of our formula grants that have been what they call impounded. So just to give you a little background, in March, the federal Congress, all of them, they came to an agreement that they were going to do a continuing resolution for funding prior to this most recent budget conversation. In that, they committed to keeping federal funding for education at the current rate at that time. There's also a federal law that says Congress has to provide states with their federal allocations no later than July 1st of the year prior to the next school year. So in essence, by federal law, the Department of Education is supposed to send to each state, Arkansas being one of them obviously, the amount of money that has been allocated for Arkansas schools for the upcoming school year. On about the 30th or right on July 1st, there was a memo that came out that said the funding for Title I, Part A, and IDEA, that's special education, would be funded, but all other formula grants were being impounded for review. That's the language. And so I assume, we kind of talked about this was coming. Quite honestly, I expected it, but I didn't expect it for a year. Right? We had kind of talked about what that might look like. And so currently, I'm just giving you in your packet there some information. Right now, we are, until they stop reviewing it, until they decide whether or not yes to send it or no, we're not, we have not received monies that are allocated for Title I Part C, that is our migrant education. We have not received monies that have been allocated for Title IIA, that is our PD, our federal PD money. We have not received our current allocated funding for Title III Part A, that's our ESOL, to support our ESOL kiddos. We have not received Title IV Part A, which is the academic enrichment. And then we have not received Title IV Part B, which is our 21st Century Community Learning Grant. And so right now, all of those are impounded.
Said we will receive Title I?
We receive Title I Part A.
Okay.
I think there's a good chance that what you see in your packet, we will not receive this year.
So what happens when federal funding comes with federal requirements, so what happens to the requirements? go away?
We don't know yet. We asked that question. We had another meeting. We had a meeting on Thursday, and then we had another meeting this morning. That's one of the questions that came out, this morning of, are we still required to provide what's mandated, even though we don't have dollars to work with yet?
So I don't have that answer either.
Right now, they don't have an answer. That's right. And so right now, we're looking at a total reduction of those 5 formula grants of a little over $645,000 to the budget. And so that is something that we're going to we're going to kind of figure out where do we prioritize. One of the things that's coming up quickly is our after-school program, that's funded by 21st Century. And right now, there is no money allocated for that. Can we allocate money for that? Probably, but that money's got to come from somewhere. And so then it becomes, what's the board willing to prioritize as far as funding to make some of those things happen? There are lots of things that we fund between Title I Part C, Title IIA, 3A, and our Title IV. The short version is some of those we're going to be able to absorb, some of those we're going to be able to move around, and some of those we're going to have to make some hard decisions on, are we going to be able to continue providing those opportunities? Or maybe put another way, in what ways do we need to act to be able to provide those opportunities? For example, I'll give you one of the questions that came out today is, let's take the 21st century learning piece. One of the questions that was asked by one of the federal coordinators of DESE is, can districts charge a nominal fee to make that happen? Well, under the grant rules, no, you can't, right? That goes back to your, do we still have to follow the rules if we're not getting any of this money? Because technically we have been awarded a grant. The grant right now looks like it may come with $0, right? So,
So if it's a total separate program.
right. Here's the other thing that we've talked about. In federal dollars are designed to supplement, not supplant, right? And so the conversation, one of the questions was, if we move some of our federal expenses out of federal, because we're not getting any more money for those, possibly, right? And we move those into, for example, operating. And then let's say in October, the feds come back and go, okay, we're going to give you this money anyway, right? Because there could be, it's possible that states may sue the federal government because all of that was approved by Congress already. And if they sue the federal government, if they win, if they whatever, then the feds may come back in October and say, okay, yes, we'll give you this money now. If we've been using state money, operating funds to pay for that, then are we going to be able to move those back into federal allocations, or are we going to get in trouble for supplanting?
Catch-22.
Yeah, the answer is nobody knows. What they said right now is it's possible, but we're not willing to say, no, you won't get in trouble until somebody at the federal level says, no, you won't get in trouble if we give you that money 2 or 3 months down the road. So right now it's a waiting game. We're trying to come up with options. I'm trying to come up with options on what that looks like. And
What is the last day that you could make a decision?
Well, truthfully, June 30th of 2026. Now here's the challenge with that, right? We could do nothing different going forward. We could charge, if you will, those, like, let's say we decided we're going to run 21st century program. We're just going to go ahead and do it the way we want it to. We could charge that those expenses to that Title 4B. and in essence, run it in the red, right? The challenge becomes, I'm gonna tell you, we want a budget for that, because if June 30th gets here and the feds have not given us any money, that money's gotta come out of state money. And so the truth is, we don't really have an extra $200,000 that is not already sort of committed by plan. It's not committed legally, but I mean, we've talked about plans for our dollars, and if we do that, and I just run that in the red, and the feds come back and go, yep, we're not giving you any more money, then I've got to have money to cover it. And that becomes the challenge. We certainly don't have $650,000
So it
to
don't
cover.
affect us this school year.
It does. That money disappears. Like right now, I don't have it. And so we have salaries.
We'll spend an extra $645 if we don't do anything different.
Well, that's what I was asking.
Yes.
When is some of the decisions you've got to make as superintendent?
Well-
What you want to do?
And I'll stand by, I mean,
Before school starts or August 1st?
we can do it anytime in there, right?
Okay.
So right now, I think the best advice the best guidance I can give to the board is, we're sort of taking a wait and see approach. We're taking kind of a slow rolling approach, because there are some decisions that if they're made in the next, I'd say few weeks, month, then we can kind of pivot, or we can say, hey, great, we're getting our money, we're going to keep going the way we're doing. But the truth is, in the new budget, this money has disappeared in the new budget, right? So if we don't have to deal with it this year, that'd be great, because I was planning on dealing with it next year anyway, and using a year to walk there. But this is where we're going to end up this time next year either
But
way.
it seems to me, all states are the same.
Correct, yes.
So surely something will give.
I would hope so.
Well, based on this administration, you can see why they're wanting to hold off on these. You know, they're not wanting to spend money on migrant education because, our administration, I voted for him, but he's not wanting to spend money on people who can't speak English, you know what I mean? Because they expect them to know English, whatever. I feel like that's the truth, isn't it? I mean, yeah, that's not politically correct to say that, but
And
that's
that's
the
where I was
truth.
saying, what comes with the federal requirements behind it? Is it
Well,
gonna be, you
Yeah.
still have to do this? Or is it gonna be, you do what you need for
Well,
your district?
based on my interpretation is, they may end up funding this, but they didn't have time to make a decision right now, right? And they're gonna we're gonna hold back that money until we figure out if we really need to give that to the schools, right?
I think the answer is yes. I think based on what I see when we start talking about the language that I see being used, at least on the news feeds that I follow, are words like self-deport, right? Immigration kinds of things. Now, the challenge is in our community, right? And this is just an educational piece for everyone in case we don't know it, but most of 16% of our student population are Marshallese, which are not considered immigrants, right? I mean, they are, so in essence, in the zeal of the federal government to sort of clamp down on the illegal immigration, right, by taking a chainsaw to it instead of a scalpel, we're also impacting school districts whose ESOL population are, those under the American umbrella who also need support, right? Now, here's the other thing. We might not need to, under a mandate, let's say they come back and say, yes, the mandates are gone, you don't have to, you're not mandated to provide that support, but providing that support is the right thing to do. Right? And so, if we have to help a student learn English to be able to access education, then that's something we're going to need to do.
So I'd be curious of what other districts are planning to do. I know Perryville District is big on their migrant education, their 21st century stuff. How these bigger schools, are they absorbing this, or are they going to wait and see too?
I can tell you in the conversations that we were a part of this morning, because I was there, Craig was there, Kim was there. We met with Secretary Oliva and Greg Rogers, who is the lead finance guy at DESE. And the short answer is nobody has any answers, right? I mean, right now everybody's just sort of brainstorming, and again, the best guidance that I think you're going to hear is don't make decisions that commit yourself one way or the other right now, because let me give you an example. On March 28th, so in essence, on March 28th, the feds sent a letter to the states that said they were canceling all grant money that was left over from COVID. Right? So we actually had a contract that we were working through, because we had gotten some communities of practice money to provide some PD experiences for teachers. Well, when that letter came out, we were contacted by Mr. Blackston at the co-op, and he said, you know, we're done. We don't have the ability to continue to spend that money. So if you have, you know, we had some PD experiences lined up for that month, and they said, the feds in essence said, if you haven't already had those PD experiences, you can't, even though you've contracted for them, you can't have them, because we're not going to pay for them. So we contacted the vendor and said, you know, we're sorry, this is what we understand, we're not going to be able to do this anymore. Well, that then worked through the system, appeals, court process, whatever. Well, on Tuesday, so July 1st, we get a letter from the feds that says, yes, you can now spend that money, right? We're going to revert back to March 27th, where you were spending the money. You can now spend that money and liquidate those things, those experiences, or those projects that were already in the works on the 28th, right? And so that was month 3. We're now so 4 months later, they've said, okay, yeah, you can go ahead and spend that money. Well, for us, the ship has sailed. I mean, you know, we can't do that now. It's in the summer. It wasn't like it was an HVAC project for us. It was a PD experience, and that's just not something we're going to be able to replicate. So it is possible, I use that example to say, it is possible that 4 months from now, right, November, we get something from the feds that says, oh yeah, we're going to give you your 21st century money. Do I think they're going to give us the migrant money? I don't. I mean, that's just my opinion based on what I see in the news and what I see coming out of Washington. They may come back and give us PD money, but they've been very clear from the podium that that the administration doesn't believe that professional development of teachers has an impact on student achievement. Okay?
What is the teacher requirement for like my continuing education? Does professional development count for continuing education for teachers?
Well, professional development is built into their contract, right? So teachers have 100.
Does it count towards their licensure?
Correct.
That's part of it, yes.
Yeah, I figured it.
So they have to have 36 hours
Right.
for their license. But we are contractually required to provide that as a part of the 190-day
So what
contract.
they're basically saying is, we're not going to give you money to provide it anymore, they can get it on their own.
Well,
They're saying you can pay for it.
yeah, in essence, they're saying if you want teachers to have more professional development than we require by state law, which is 36, then you're going to have to find somewhere else to pay for it. The feds are no longer going to pay for additional training. So, for example, we just sent, I've gotten 3 emails from various individuals about how excited the second grade team was to be able to go to a training called Get Your Teach On. Ms. Crike was there. It's a great training, right? Several of them emailed me and said, hey, we'd like to send more teachers next year. And unfortunately, I had to tell them, hey, I'm glad it was a great training. We used federal PD dollars to send teachers this year, and right now it looks like the federal PD dollars have dried up. So I'm not saying no, but we can't just go out and register right now because I don't know if we're gonna have any money.
PD is confusing to me because like for my license, like I've never worked anywhere where they've done my continuing ed for me. And so that's where I get confused on like what the PD is. You understand what I mean? Like, so if the PD is required by the state or if it's required by the licensure or federal, like it's confusing to me because I've always had to take off work and go get continuing education.
Well, basically, I think they're equal. Our
Well,
continuing
what I'm saying is
ed,
like
their
it's-
professional development. But it's like I say,
But
there's
it's
been a lot of
never-
things
it's-
over the years for teachers that had been.
Right.
What she's saying is never set up, like I pay for my employees to get theirs, but I do not set it up for them. They can go
Right.
find out course on their own and send me everything and
Mine,
I'm reimbursed.
I paid for it all on my own.
Yeah.
Yes.
My company did.
And it seems like that's what it's kind of going to, is away from, like I've never worked anywhere in the last 15 years on my license that has said, okay, we're gonna give you 36 hours a year of continuing education, because if they would, that's a salary bonus for me.
So I would tell you that there are an equal number of models for getting continuing education credits as there are occupations in the world, right? All the way, I mean, just so happened, I mean, I've got a little bit of experience based on some coursework that I took at one point, and it ranges from, you know, at that time, dentists were getting their continuing education by listening to cassette tapes, you know, that they bought for $5 each. You know, I mean, everybody has different models. In the model that Arkansas has adopted as a part of the education world, it's built into their contract. And then if there are things that we feel like are important, for example, like Get Your Teach On, that will help teachers or help school buildings with their culture, with instruction, then we can ask those teachers to go, and when we ask them to go, we're gonna pay for that. We actually have a board policy that requires us to pay teachers to go to those events, you know, tuition, travel, meals, those kind of things.
So let me ask you this then, you said this is an additional, so this federal amount of the 104,280, right? How much of that are we relying on to pay for the necessity, the 36 hours?
None.
So this is just all additional
Now-
on top of the 36 hours?
Yes, however, in all of those, we pay salaries. There are people whose positions are paid for by these grant funds. So we
I'm
have,
just referring to the PD one specifically.
and I am too. There are salaries, there are contracts wrapped up in that.
District employees?
So is this the final decision at this point?
Informational.
The language that has been used for the last week is, these monies are currently under review.
Okay.
So it's still just unknown. Just unknown.
Right.
Well, it's probably 80-20 confirmed, but, you know, you would think that there would be some type of appeals process, like I say, for our situation and our demographics, you know, for, you know, the migrant. You know, I mean, I just can't see where you can cut that off because,
It's industry support too, I mean, it's in our area, like, it's not illegal immigrants, it's not.
Well, I can look at it from another side is that, you know, the population in our community that's been here, they've been here for 8 to 10 years. You know, your young people should be picking up the language from birth now, you know, I mean, it's one of those things that they're not like new people coming in all the time, you know what I mean? And so from a pencil pusher in Washington, they're gonna look at it like, hey, you've been getting this money for how many years, and there's, you know, yeah,
I think you're gonna have to be more generations down the road because you still have the same parents that are not, you know, necessarily learning the English.
Yeah.
It's gonna take those kids that have come through our school
for
to
teaching
teach
children,
their
yeah,
children.
yeah.
I mean, I think you're looking at yours.
You can
down the
imagine
road.
that, you know, a pencil pusher, a policy maker is just gonna look at it and be like, why do you need more money? You've had it for 8 to 10 years, and your population is still the same population. You're not getting new immigrants to your area.
So, just a hypothetical question, so if we chose to fund this, quote unquote, out of our pocket, is there anywhere else to fund it with money other than state money? Because where you said, well, if the Fed came back 4 months later and said, oh, we're gonna give it to you, but we already used state money, is that gonna work?
Well, so
Is there a place where we can get it from local money, so that way if the feds do pass, we can say, well, we're paying this back, we're paying the local money back, because that's where we had to borrow this from without causing a rift in the
Right.
matrix.
so,
The thing about this, every district's the same situation.
yeah, they are.
Whatever is decided at Fort Smith will be decided at Pocahontas.
But we also
Not
don't want to,
necessarily, because it comes down to finance.
Yeah, yeah.
Fort Smith may be in a better financial
No, if
situation.
if they done.
Oh, yeah, if they do it
They
across the
want their
board.
money back to be
Yeah,
reimbursed.
but I'm just saying, is there a way we can do it if we decide to go that route without putting ourselves in?
well, that's why he kind of said 1 year, because, yeah, we might be on the bucket for that 600, but we don't want to cut it, and then 6 weeks later, we end up getting funded for it. We've already cut all our teachers loose, you know, that's just.
Oh, yeah, no, that's what I'm looking for a way, how do we get through this year? Because like Dr. Arbuckle said, we already anticipated this for next year. So you're gonna be hard pressed to find a way for me to say I'm cutting this, because people are gonna lose their jobs. In 6 months from now, we're making the money, and now these people lost their jobs for no reason.
So I will say this, I think I can make the commitment that we're not ripping anybody. That's my plan, right? I'm not planning on getting rid of anybody. We may end up having to move people from one bucket into another bucket, right? That is certainly possible. But the way you have to think of funding is currently we have state and local money, that's one bucket, right? We have federal money, that's one bucket, and then we have what are called state categorical money, and that's a bucket, right? So a real simple way to think about it is, if you pay for it out of state or local, then you can't move it into federal, okay? Because that's supplanting. In essence, what you're saying is, we were paying for it out of state and local because we think it's important, and now we're going to move it into federal, which is supposed to be extra money to provide things above and beyond what you were providing. And in essence, if you move it out of state and local into federal, then what you're doing is you're saying, we're not providing above and beyond, we're just providing the same, and that's not federal money. So what you can do is you can move things between federal money and state categorical money, right? So you can do that. But right now, we have salaries in state categorical money, right? So for example, let's take ESOL, because that's on here twice really, migrant and ESOL, right? We're already paying for salaries out of our state ESOL to the point where we don't have a bunch left over. So I don't have enough in our state ESOL to pick up all of the stuff that we need to out of migrant and Title III, right? So I can't spend money that we don't have. And so if we want to pick up all of it, some of it has to go to state and local. And as soon as we move it into state and local, then that's the question that we were talking about earlier. Can I move it back into feds if 4 months, 5 months, 6 months down the road, the feds give us money? Right now, the answer is you might be able to, but we don't know for sure. You follow me? So really, we only have these 3 buckets of money. And we have, with our local and our state dollars, we're providing salaries. That's the 82, 83, 84% of that operating.
What are we gonna be at when this goes away?
Well,
What would we be?
that depends. When I figured it back in March when we were doing it, it took us up to like 87%.
That's what I was thinking, probably about 4%.
And so realistically, it's one of those things where either services are going to have to be looked at pretty hard, positions are going to have to be looked at as far as moving them around into buckets that we still are getting money for. Or we look at increasing the burden on our state and local operating. But again, to Gary's point, everybody's in this situation. It's not just Pocahontas. It's not all I'm doing.
62 million for the state, 62 million, and 650,000 is our, we're about one of 100 for the states.
It's about $4 billion across the entire United States is what we're talking about. So I'm just bringing this to you so that you kind of understand the financial world that we're going to be operating in. We've had lots of conversations about things that the board would like to do, and this is one more layer of things that we're going to have to navigate.
Yeah, it throws a wrench in the plans, basically.
Well, it goes back to the point too, we're going to talk about potentially going after millage increases. Another more information you have to pass along to the community and saying, this was the, crap, for lack of a better word, that was dropped in our lap. We don't have a choice, especially if the money goes away with the mandates, because we still don't know if the mandates are going to stick or not.
Well, and I think both the federal administration and the state administration, I think, has made no secret of their intention is to transfer the tax burden to the local site.
They are going to.
Right?
And we're going to decide if it's a priority for us.
Right, and that's what it's going to come
But
down
I think
to.
whenever they do that, I think you're going to see the state enact the millage. They're going to increase the millage. They'll have to. Because they'll be, yes, on the state level, because there's no way that every district in the state will vote for a millage increase.
See, a few years ago, the state increased the millage to all districts to 25 mils. Some districts were 19. They had increased their taxes 6 mils. That was state mandated for him up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the state ended with a $350 million surplus, so.
Realistically, see them move that to 26 or 28 at some point.
And that could be.
That's certainly the way our present governor is.
The other piece that I wanted to bring your attention to is we do not have any guidance at this point on Medicaid and RMAC. There's been a lot of talk in the federal budget about cutting Medicaid. Well, we get a portion of our revenue from Medicaid, so we are able to get reimbursed for monies that we spend on, for example, OT and PT services for our kiddos. We are able to get money back on speech services that we provide on our kiddos. So we actually bill the state for that reimbursement. So I wanted to put in your packet, this in fiscal year of 25, the fiscal year that just ended last week. Last year, we got $234,686 in revenue reimbursed to the district for providing OT and PT services. We also got an additional $88,000 last year from RMAC for providing speech services, other health services, the services the nurse provides. I did ask that question today as well, and with a pretty hearty chuckle, they said if I could answer that question, I could probably be on the nightly news because nobody knows the answers to those questions right now. But that is another piece of dollars that may or may not be available to us as a district.
So how's that being, from a medical standpoint, how's that being billed then? Are we billing for that and Medicaid reimbursing us? So the child's individual Medicaid?
No, we're providing the information to the state and billing for those hours, those services, based on IEP, based on 504, based off of, lots of different records. And then the state, every month, they write us a check for whatever it is we billed them for and that they have deemed reimbursable. So it gets to, $900,000 really quickly in those buckets. As I know more,
Basically, this is a forewarning to be sparing going forward.
I mean, it's going to be this kind of stuff that's going to impact, that we're going to have to, I mean, it's going to have to impact how we look at the services we provide, and are there going to be opportunities to provide, I know the board has been pretty clear that, raises is something that they want to do. Those things become much tougher to do when you're losing $900,000 a year in funding. So we'll work through it. Everybody will work through it. We're all getting the information at the same time across the state, and so it may be one of those things where we're just going to have to be patient and work through it
The ones
together.
that this is really going to hurt is the ones that are operating above 90%. They're spending all their money.
Right.
I've got something I'd like to, it kind of goes in hand in hand, but it may be better to be in old business as far as our budget that I want to talk about. So
Okay.
I'm gonna wait till old budget or
How
whatever.
how successful would an after-school program be if it was a paid program?
So Craig and I kind of talked about this morning because that was one of the things I was thinking when I wasn't sleeping last night.
I think a lot of parents utilize it because they work till 5.
And in essence, to provide 2 teachers in a classroom with 15 kiddos, it's roughly using 2 hours a day, 4 days a week. Okay, it's in essence $10 per kid. Now that doesn't break us even, but that gets us close, right? So you're looking at about $40 a week.
Per kid.
Which, if you broke it down for $600 a year, I think we could get close to breaking even per kiddo, right? $600 per kiddo per year gets us real close to breaking even, and provide that family with a similar level of service that we provided last year, 300 hours. Now, what that doesn't include is salaries that we paid the directors. Doesn't include salaries that we paid administratively, right? It's just 2 teachers in a classroom with 15 kids. And I know that we had many more people involved than that, but in essence, that's sort of a rough estimate.
If you had to minimize it.
Right, so it's a different graphic.
Yeah, I was thinking St. Paul's is $12. It's $12 a day because they're aftercare. Is it 9? I knew it was. I thought it was up there, but I wonder. I hate to start something like that and have it 1 year and then just jerk it away and say no, okay, we can't do this. I get why we can't, but.
Well, and again, and we kind of talked about this, but one of the questions that's out there is, let's say that we do go down that path and we say, even if we cut that in half and said for $5 a day, right, for $300 a year or whatever, we'll do that. If in October they come in and say, okay, here's your 21st century money, now what? Because if we accept that 21st century money, we can't be charging dollars to parents. We can't charge a nominal fee. So, and I don't want to get in the bucket of, well, we're going to reimburse you $300 and and we don't want to do that either. So that's why right now I think I don't think we can make a decision on it. Okay. Anything else on the federal funding update? All right, I just wanted to also kind of talk about, or just bring your attention to, and I know, I think almost everybody saw it last week when we were in here, but if you haven't, we should walk into the junior high office. You should see that remodel. Furniture in there is new, reconfiguration. We tried to open that space up and provide a better experience for our families when they come in, for when they need to enroll, things like that. Make sure that folks are where they need to be. We've moved the nurse's office here. We've added a conference room that I think is really nice. It'll be really nice. In fact, we'll do executive session in that conference room this evening.
Where did the nurse's office and the SRO office go?
SRO office went down here, and the nurse's office is right next door. I can show it to you. Move the registrar out front, so now we'll have 2 individuals out front. I also wanted to point out that we did work with Nab Holtz and had the bathroom walls repainted. We had noted that it wasn't a quality job the first time, and so they did come in and repaint those walls. That was at no cost to the district, and so we were able to take care of that. Again, the idea here is that, and we've talked about this before, that we're trying to make sure that people understand that we are making inroads in the maintenance of our buildings, right? That it's not just we're trying to ask for these big projects and not taking care of what we have. In fact, in a future meeting, we'll be talking about roof maintenance, and we'll be talking about some of these other maintenance kinds of things that are coming out. And so we want to make sure that folks understand that yes, we are not, if we end up going to the public for support of, for example, a new high school, we are able to address any situation of somebody who might say, well, they're asking for it, but they're not taking care of the buildings that they have. Because I know that is a statement that we have, surfaced here as a part of board meetings, that may have been a concern during previous millage asks. So I think that's important as well. 3.3, I wanted to kind of highlight, going back to our community conversation that we had about band and the sixth grade experience, really tried to think about how can we provide an experience, a high quality experience for all kiddos. What I felt like I heard was it's very important to I'm going to call them our parents who have kids involved in the arts, band, to make sure that those kiddos have a full 5-day-a-week experience in that. We also need to honor our other kiddos. One of the things that I had something that came out of that Heritage Council meeting was an idea and a focus on how do we get more STEM into, for example, our classrooms, so science, technology, engineering, math. I kind of got to thinking with Mr. Linder that 6th grade might be a great place to sort of pilot something, since we have some needs in 6th grade anyway. And so we are going to look at, and we're working on it currently, adding a STEAM component, that's science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, specifically to the 6th grade curriculum. I believe we have, I think Mr. Linder set up a meeting for the two of us with our 6th grade teachers later in the week to start brainstorming what do they need to be able to do that. I'll be, as we're kind of talking through and revisiting the federal piece, I had $5,000 set aside in our federal allocation to help pay for supplies and curriculum, things that 6th grade teachers would need to be able to pull that off. That money is gone, but that's something that I think we're going to need to invest in, and so that's one of those pieces that I think that $5,000 would be well spent in a model like this. So that is something that we are going to absorb, because I don't want that to go away. We need those things to be able to kickstart this experience for our 6th graders. The idea is that if this is a high quality experience this year, that we would expand that down and look at for 26-27, looking at least a 5th and 6th grade experience, if not a 4th, 5th, and 6th grade experience, right? And so I think it's going to be a good thing, but it is going to be something that we'll want to, if it's successful, which I think it will, we're going to want to continue, and I think that is something that we can do that on. The STEAM model is designed to provide students with high interest, inquiry-based experiences tailored to student interest and their desire to learn. So we tap into that inquiry-based side, which means we're going to have to do maybe some training. We're going to have to do some, getting supplies, things like that, to be able to pull that off. I mentioned to you that we have a meeting set up, expanding it. And then Mr. Leonard and I are going to continue to investigate and plan for a more immersive science experience. In fact, I think we've talked about, I mentioned that the goal is to pull science out of that, if you want to call it the core rotation, and make that specific, make that a dedicated time for our kiddos. We've got to do something to work on our science achievement scores, and we think that pulling that out will be one of those things that will help us increase those science achievement scores. So we're looking at multiple different ways to attack that experience at the fourth, fifth, and sixth grade to ensure that that is the highest quality experience that we can give kiddos. And you know, my goal is we want to be better in 25, 26 than we were in 24, 25, and we're going to want to be better in 26, 27 than we were whatever the next school year brings. So I think we're on a good path. I think we're looking to be innovative. We're looking to engage kiddos where they're at with interest, their interest, providing some student voice in that, and I think that'll be important to its success. So, okay. I also wanted to bring to your attention some information. You know, we've been talking about the high school, possible high school project. We talked with Todd last week. He is working on working through the POR to really try to identify what are those spaces. You know, we talked about what spaces are required, how large those spaces have to be, you know, what goes into that. And so he's currently working through that POR to really sort of get us a bottom line. You have to build this many square feet to meet the POR and what's required. He said it's probably going to be another week or so before he really has that down on paper. And so he's working through that. In the meantime, I wanted to provide to you an updated coverage analysis. So what you have in your packet is an update on looking at two different millage numbers. The first one is a 2.98 millage ask. The second is a 3.0 millage ask. Both of them would generate the same dollar amount, a $15.5 million bond. You'll notice that the difference is in the surplus. The surplus on a 3.0 millage ask is about $2,000 more or so in surplus than 3.9 or a 2.98 ask. As I've kind of mentioned before, I think there is some value in that 2.98 ask because that's right, because it's not 3.
But it doesn't make much of a difference.
And it really doesn't.
I was comparing, it was like where, I don't understand what's different, but.
It's in the surplus. So if you compare on, let's just take 2028, on a 2.98 millage ask, the surplus is $699,700, and on the 3.0, it's $703,800. So it's literally right. It's literally $3,500. And the advantage you get by asking for 0.02 points under 3, I think is right.
That's when I sell a soda for $2.99.
Huh?
That's when I sell a soda for $2.99.
Exactly. So that's, I mean, I really think.
That's our figure. I mean, I think we're all in agreement.
I think so.
I mean, it just looks better on paper. But with all this coming, is it gonna be enough? You know, with the federal funding and everything else that's being.
It was 3 point, what the last time, 3.6?
3.84 is what I understand.
The ask was for.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I've seen it's 3.4.
I mean, I feel
Well,
like
now,
that
that
would
was-
be,
Well, maybe, that may be. I thought it was.
It was a lot bigger project.
I feel like we're being as frugal as we can be by just asking for 2.98. I mean, we could go a lot higher and utilize it and be a lot better off than we are. But I feel like by sticking to something like 2.98, we're saying, this is what we need to get this done. We're being useful of our money and not trying to price gouge you.
But I think the key to is how much can we do with that? Can we do the whole project?
We don't know that for sure. I think what you heard Todd say on Monday is there's a good possibility that we can. And I think that's going to come down to his POR numbers and what that looks like.
Well, too,
It may have been 3.4.
the uncertainty is that the cost of materials for the tariffs, that's an issue.
Right.
It's exciting to know we can get the clubs our kids deserve.
Okay, anything else about that? Okay, so I'm going to move into old business, and I put this on the old business because we started talking about strategic planning back in October when I presented the board with the facilities plan, and then fast forward a few months, and we had the vision document based on some of the conversations that we had or that I had with teachers, with community members, based on survey data. And so what I put in front of you is a little bit larger document. It's a 5-year strategic planning document that is built around the 4 strategic plan priorities that we had talked about, which is academic excellence and innovation, thriving together in a safe and supportive environment, building for the future, and empowering our educators and leaders. So you'll see that the plan is broken down into those priorities, and then each one of those priorities has at least 1 or 2 goals. And so just wanted to kind of put this out there. It's really not, I didn't necessarily intend it to be an action item this evening. I mean, I guess it could be, but I think it might take a little bit of time to look at it, to study it. I'd like to share it with our administrators, begin sharing it with some of our teacher leader groups, and get it out there so that we can get some feedback on it, just to make sure that this is a direction that we want to go before acting upon it, to accept it. Obviously, that's within the purview of the board. If that's something you want to do, you can. But I think I would like to, at the very least, maybe just keep it in front of you for the next couple of weeks and maybe act on it if we needed to at our regular July meeting. I am going to have some meetings this week that I'd like to share this document out, but I wanted this body to be the first to see it in public.
What is our current overall millage rate?
37, so it's 32.8, give or take.
It's probably
Yeah, 32.81.
3.4. Let's ask. They wanted to go to 36.2.
I think I'm getting the 8.4 from you saying 3.4 and me seeing 2.81 on here, so, or 7.81.
So at least we're coming in under that. I mean, like I say, that's almost a half that we're looking at. So.
So again, you'll notice that that first priority is about academic excellence and innovation. It has some action items on there, just the general piece. Want to make sure that we're using guaranteed and viable high-quality instructional materials. And then there's some action items underneath there, as well as data, outcomes. Excuse me. We want to make sure that we're using common assessments across grade levels. across contents, that we're using data results to drive instruction, providing response to intervention or extended learning opportunities. Now, a lot of these are things that we are doing, but I'm also trying to bring some unity and bring some cohesion across the entire district. One of the things that I've talked with principals about, that I've talked with some of our teachers about, is right now, I feel like we're a system of schools. We have a system of 4 schools and the admin office. And what I'd like to move us to is that we are a school system. We are a cohesive school system from pre-K through 12, providing similar experiences, similar grade level experiences across the 4 schools, and we're not 4 schools doing 4 different things. Again, those are some things I think we've talked about a little bit in the past. We have a third goal there, provide additional opportunities as well as enhancing existing options for student involvement. Again, I think you'll see some of those when we start talking about our STEAM experience. I think you're seeing some of those when we start talking about our shooting sports experience. We've talked about these opportunities when we start talking about expanding our agri opportunities, things like that. And so pretty much we can build those into this particular plan. When we talk about empowering educators and leaders, we want to maintain a competitive salary schedule. I think that's been pretty clear. Retain staff, develop leadership opportunities and training experiences for our staff who would like to see those. A third priority is making sure that we have a safe and supportive environment. Things that are on tap there, you see enhancing school safety measures across all buildings. There are things in there continuing to apply for safety grants. We've gotten safety grants before. We've got a safety grant right now. So not all of these things are new, but they are things that when we draw them together in a plan, bring some cohesion to how we make decisions. Right? Are we making decisions this is important, are we making decisions as a board that align to this strategic planning document? Are we making decisions administratively, central office, and building level administrators that are aligned to this strategic plan? Are we making decisions in the classroom that are aligned to this strategic plan? I think that's the accountability that we bring to ensure that all of our arrows, for lack of a better term, are going in the same direction. Which again is important when we start talking about becoming being a school district, not a system of schools or a school system. Foster inclusive and positive learning environments. And then you'll see that fourth priority, building for the future. And we're talking about replacing, remodeling aging infrastructure. Again, that's something that we've talked about, that we have that facilities plan to help work through, modernize classrooms. And so I feel like all of these priorities, all the goals within the priorities, point us back to the things that we have surfaced over the last 2 years. This board has surfaced things that have come up in our community with our teachers. This sort of brings all of those things within focus and will help us to ensure that, again, we're making decisions that are taking us towards our goal and not sort of meandering there. Questions? Okay.
Gotta have a plan, work the plan.
That's the idea. Okay, now is this where you wanted to?
Yeah, I want to bring up something. So, old business, I guess this would be considered old business. You know me, in the last 2.5 years, I'm trying to figure out how much the school has any extra funds for. And many times I've brought up that the school is saving a certain amount for every year, but it doesn't seem like you guys believe it. Next meeting, I want you to take these numbers that I've got in front of me and come back to me and say, hey, this is not right. This is the actual numbers, because I'm going to explain to you where I'm coming up with these numbers, and I want to kind of pin down, because as a business owner, the most important thing is a profit and loss. So I deal with so many businesses that are buying from me or whatever that don't realize they're making a profit or losing money. And usually if they're losing money and they don't realize it because their inventory is going down, they don't realize their inventory is going down at a restaurant or whatever. Now, I'm very good at figuring out whether a business is making or losing money. And so by my estimates, the biggest number one thing that you can find out if you're losing money or making money is your checking account and your savings account. At the end of the year, if you have more money in your checking account than the year before and the savings account, then you're probably saving money. But now you have to identify what is causing your bank account to go up. It may be certain grants that you got this year but won't get next year. So on here I've got June 23, the ending balance of our checking account at the end of, and this is all public knowledge on the website, was $18,316,000. That was all our accounts combined. In June of 24, it was $21,489,000. April is the last month that's on the website. Of course, normally we would look at it in June. It was $23,735,000. So by my figures, the school in the 23-24 year saved over $3 million, and the 24-25 year saved over $2 million. That's supposed to be raised. You know, we gave about a $250,000 raise last year, so that means our income is going to be dropping this coming year. But this year we're actually increasing from 77.71 to 81.62 per student, so that's going to give us a $740,000 increase. Even taking away the raise from that equation, I still feel like we're going to save $2.5 million per year. And you know, you've heard me say, I think we should take $500,000 every year and put in our building fund, $500,000 every year and put in our maintenance fund, $500,000 every year and put either in raises or new positions to give him, either bringing new teachers in for different positions or giving our teachers raises. And I think we can afford $1.5 million a year, you know, and this is where I'm getting my numbers. I want you to come, you know, next meeting and kind of say, hey, these numbers aren't right, because, I mean,
Chad, here's what I'd rather go do. You sit down with Dr. Arbuckle one-on-one and come up with.
for sure.
I know what you're saying, but you know, and
Well, by my estimates, I mean,
all that is numbers on the page today.
for sure. That's why I tried to make it,
That's what the
you know,
superintendent's job is, to give us
for
the
sure,
numbers.
yeah. But what I'm saying is, you know, we're saying that, you know, we're wanting to keep $5 million in our building fund. Well, every year we can bring in $2.5 million if we don't have any increase in our raises and building fund. You know, we could potentially, in 3 years, we could have a $7.5 million increase in our building fund. If
That's
we
not
start.
guaranteed, though.
It's far more guaranteed than my business.
Well, we're
And
talking about the school. But,
The
I mean,
school knows how
it's-
much they're getting every year. They know how much, about the same amount of students every year. I mean, it's, when I budget out for the year, I don't know, my sales may drop next year. You know, it's a totally, you know, hidden number there. The school is actually pretty easy to figure, you know.
Well,
Now, my
you know,
assumption,
by state law, the school is audited each year down to the penny.
Mm-hmm.
And so the numbers we get back should be accurate. And
well,
that don't match the numbers.
what do you mean doesn't match the numbers?
We didn't have $2.5 million left over last
You
year.
did. You did.
Did we, Dr. Arbuckle?
I mean, last year we moved, $4 million into the building fund to reset. You know, I think we talked about, we were over in the library and we talked about how over the previous 3 or 4 years,
Allocated to the wrong account.
we were spending all of our local money and holding on to the state money. And we really, I mean, in my estimation, the idea is you want to spend all the state money and then hold on to the local money if that's what you're going to do. So we flipped that, and that was the only legal way to do it, was to move it into our 3,200 account. And that reset, and in essence, got us back to the way the district was doing business for many, many years, you know, prior to some of the recent years. So we did move into the building fund that dollar amount, but it was to reset, like $4 million, but it was to reset that whole
Well,
thing.
you can roll this figure back 4 to 6 years, and it started off about $1 million a year and then $2 million a year. So if you run it by the 4 to 6 year mark, it's still over $2 million a year. I wanted to get away from COVID money because we're no longer getting COVID money. That's why I attribute the 23-24 school year to making over $3 million, because some of that was still COVID money. This year in the 24-25, we did not get any COVID money. So I feel like that's the more accurate figure that the school is saving here.
Okay, so let's, and this, I mean, we can talk about, we will talk about this at our regular board meeting when we go over this month's financials. But, you know, the district is not allowed to carry over any more than 20% of our net legal balance, okay? Right now, we are over that net legal balance by about 1.4 million, okay? But that includes, that 1.4 million actually includes, because we have not made the transfer of the $600,000 that the board, voted to include in the budget, right? That's that $500,000 you're talking about. So in essence, right now, and we're working through, Kim is diligently working through moving expenses, making sure that period 12 and period 13 close out the way we need to. But I expect that dollar amount that you're thinking about, right? If we're going to keep, if the idea is the state says you can keep up to 20% of your net legal balance, we are going to only be over that net legal balance by about $800,000 this year.
But
so realistically,
if you transferred the money out of your account to the same balance you started last year with, you could transfer 2 or 3 million.
And that may or may, I don't know. I don't know if that's true. I mean, I'm going to take your word for it. But I do not think this board wants to spend every dime that they get every single year.
Absolutely not.
For sure. But you're going to slowly build up more and more money in your checking account to where next year you're going to have to put more money, because every year, unless we have a 200 drop in students, which I don't foresee, I consider the school going to every year have a couple $1 million. So if you don't do it one year, you're going to have to do more the following year. I feel like every year.
Chad, in essence, that's why we have $15 million in the building fund.
Yep.
We saved it, this started in 95, I don't know if y'all heard me say it. We put $200,000. We might put $400,000. But the whole idea is we knew at some time we were going to have to replace some school buildings. So we used that money to do that. We did the junior high gym, a couple $1 million. We did the athletic complex. We did the bus garage. We did the junior high gym, MD Williams cafeteria. We used that from that building fund so that we didn't have to ask for millage.
I mean, right now, if we didn't have the money we had, we're going to be asking the people for 10 mills, and there is no way anybody's going to pass that.
For sure.
I
I understand what you're saying, but what I'm saying is how much extra is the school bringing in every year than what's needed? The budget is one thing. How much are we bringing in versus our budget? This minus this should be around that $2 million figure per year. And, every time I hear, I was pushing for raises. We can't afford any more than this. We can't afford any more of this. I want to get a dollar amount that I'm comfortable, that this board says, hey, we can afford this, I'm not saying that we should absorb this $645,000 possible loss, but I want that to be an option because we know how much the school is making. As a business owner, if I didn't know if my business was making $100,000 or $1 million, I wouldn't know what to spend for the following year. I don't know if I can afford a building if I don't know how much I'm bringing in and making. So as a school, as a steward of the school, I want to run it like a business. I want to see how much is the school saving every year.
Yeah,
and for 2.5 years, I don't know that number. I can speculate by looking at the bank accounts, but I'm not involved in the school finances. But I think we can come up with a good figure what the school could potentially afford, because in 2 or 3 years, we say we can't afford a gym right now. Well, if we sock away $1.5 million a year, we can afford a gym in 3 or 4 years, almost paid for out of pocket. But I don't think we should put all our money into the gym,
we just talked about also, we're going to lose $645,000 in federal funding.
Almost 900 if you count.
Well, if that all goes through.
You count the rest of it.
If that all goes through.
If you're already operating at $1 million and we have to try to cover that to keep the program going.
Yeah. But before this meeting, before we talked about losing federal money, everybody that talks to me from you in the meetings is, we don't have any extra money, we don't have any extra money. And I want to just say, hey, we don't have any extra money. I want you guys to show me that. Because by my estimates, we do.
Chad, I know what got that, I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but I've got to have the superintendent tell me that.
For sure.
That's his job.
For sure.
It's not your job. You don't work here. The superintendent does.
For sure.
I don't mean, don't take that the wrong
I
way.
understand.
But you know, I just have to hear, because he's the one that this board hired to look at these numbers. So, yeah, we need those numbers. I mean, you bring up a point, and I think he deserves the opportunity to explain where it's at.
Well, I don't have a problem with that at all. I am going to say from the get-go, school is not a business. I mean, it is a service that we provide as a state, as a community to our patrons. And, you know, so I look at it, I mean, I know the language I hear you using is, how much money is the school making? And I'm just going to say the school doesn't make any money.
For sure.
Right? We are
But
in
we should
essence.
know about how much we save every year to where we can invest it back into our teachers, into our buildings, and into our new construction projects.
And I think that's the balance again.
And I think we're all on the same page as far as raises, but he is the one that's day in, day out with the numbers. And I don't want him to make a recommendation to us unless he is 110% comfortable.
But yeah, I don't have any problem with getting that information and then sitting down with you and looking at it. And then, you know, you can come back and, I mean, if you want, I don't mind people sitting there, but I'm just not sure these numbers are going to excite everybody. But, okay.
Y'all hash it out and get back to it.
Yeah. Okay, we have our first action item is pest control. I just wanted to bring this to your attention, and I'd like to have a vote on this. We have been looking at options for our pest control service. Currently, our provider is Terminex. That cost to us is about a little over $7,000 per year. It only provides insect service. And we have bid that out. We're looking at Terminex as our current provider. We're also looking at Hyde's Pest Control. You have the dollar amounts there for the insects only, insects with the rodents from year 1 and rodents year 2. The reason I'm bringing this to you is because, one, it does look like there's extra cost in this, but one of the things that I think.
Ask is the rodents. Do we have a rodent issue? Okay, I didn't know. I wasn't.
Yeah, it's an issue.
In certain buildings, I'm not
Is
sure.
this district-wide?
Huh?
Is this district-wide? All of
It right now it would be, except the elementary school is on Hyde's already. So the elementary school is not included on this.
I remember we.
Do they do rodents at the elementary school already? Insects and rodents?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now here's the thing. The information that we get from Terminex is very limited, and communication has really been lacking. In fact, when we ask them to provide us information on what they service, their information is pretty spotty. Like, we can't tell for sure whether or not the classrooms are being sprayed in this building because it's not noted anywhere. And so far, they've been very reticent to give us any additional information. So my recommendation is going to be that for the upcoming school year, we go with Hyde's, that we approve the insects with the rodents. So on the year 1 cost, that would top out at $16,521. One of the things I like about Hyde's is, one, they're a local company, so they have been more responsive to us inquiries that we have. They also respond more quickly to the district when we have needs. Terminex seems to be less responsive, and the truth is,
I've got the same response.
okay.
If they can get them there.
Right. Okay.
Is it like a monthly, do they come monthly and spray, or will they come?
They'll come monthly, and Craig's got some details on
So
that.
this is under our dollar amount we need to vote on, so it sounds like you're just.
It is, but I'd like to have a vote on it.
Well, I mean, I have no problem with Heinz. I would not have a problem with the 2 year.
Well-
Save the
It
additional.
goes down the second.
In essence, that's saying there's
Oh,
a, there's
okay. Oh,
a
okay.
$2,000.
That's not a 2 year contract.
Right,
Okay,
no,
gotcha,
it's
gotcha.
a 1 year
Gotcha.
contract, but I'm just showing you, if we continue with Hyde's, that cost will drop
That's fine.
by a couple $1,000.
Is our contract with Terminix up?
Yes.
Is that?
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the superintendent to hire $16,521 per year.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to go with Heights Pest Control for 2 years. Everybody in favor say yes.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, the other item that we have on the agenda is after our last meeting, there was some discussion about construction management, and so based on the conversation and individual conversations that I had, I felt like that it's worth putting this on the agenda as an action item. The board has really 3 options the way I see it, and those are laid out in your packet. Those options include 1, reaffirming Nabholz to continue on as the construction management company for the planned high school project. Second option would be directing the superintendent to put forth an RFQ, request for qualifications for construction management. That would then include the board interviewing construction management companies and then identifying a construction management. Could be Nabholz, could be somebody else. The third option is directing the superintendent to pursue a general contractor through a hard bid process. Just as I mentioned at our last meeting, I would not recommend this due to the size and the scope of the project. Also, in talking to some construction managers, they were hard pressed to tell me the last time that was done on a project of our scale.
Is this something we got to reaffirm every year? Because didn't we just do this?
This was right before the bathroom remodel.
You did it in essence, we continued on with Nabholz for the bathroom remodel.
That was in the summer.
And that was
Okay.
a year ago.
Has anything changed with them?
Not with Nabholz. But I felt like my sense was in our last conversation, we were in different places.
Oh, I must have left.
So I wanted to.
You talking about our meeting we had?
Yeah, Monday. Yeah, and we ended up having to, just so everybody knows, we ended up having to end that meeting because we lost a quorum, right? Now, the meeting, to our credit, I mean, the meeting was only intended to be an hour long, and we were there for an hour and a half. But we, yeah.
You guys had appointments, probably.
So we didn't end up coming to a consensus or a conclusion at that meeting. And so given the fact that we want to be transparent, we want to make sure everybody's on the same page and everything's above board. And that's our option.
Navajo's just speaking from experience that, we used it to build the elementary school. When problems arose, they were taken care of.
If the superintendent we had at the time notified. I think there was a lot of things that fell through the cracks because
they
of
weren't
the
notified.
limbo of superintendents.
Right.
But
Sorry.
not Navajo's fault. But they were taken care of. And, they were good to work with. I know that Chad, he's got some concern about the cost. Chad, and all the projects that we've done, they are. I just sometimes walk out that door right there and think, it shouldn't cost that much money. I think they're all going to be the same, no matter what.
Well, I mean, I put together some numbers at the last meeting they're around $50 more a square foot, and that's $4 million for this project, and that's huge, when you can get another company to come in for $4 million less, that's either make or break this project. And so I think we should interview. I think we should open up for interviews and then and get 4 or 5 people in here and interview them, and
But see, they still can't tell you anything. Because all that is
They can tell us where a majority of their subcontractors, because guess what?
Oh, yeah, they can, they might, they
Yeah,
have.
because remember the-
Navajo the other day, you said Navajo, said they have an office in Jonesboro, that's where we went to.
Well, why did they get a painter out of Bryan, Arkansas? Why did they get a painter out of Bryan, Arkansas for $44,000 when we could have got it locally for
Most of their
$10,000?
contractors from, in the elementary, came from Jonesboro and Logan,
Yeah.
I think, maybe there was a couple of Poplar.
Well, I've been
Maybe
involved in
their
this.
subs carry all the liability they need. I mean, I don't know.
They never contacted the local painters that we could have got for $10,000. We spent $44,000 on painting, which should not have been anywhere close to that.
I was thinking Nathan said they couldn't get the local painters because they didn't have the liability.
They never even talked to them.
But that's what I'm saying, I think they knew they
Does
didn't have the
Navhopes
liability.
contact them to bid it, or do
They said they were
put it
going-
on a screen and they go out and bid it themselves?
They said they were going to contact the local painters and did not. And you can say they did a good job, but then, you know, one of them did the epoxy terrible in the bathrooms. And that's just a little project.
But
And,
that's, you know, I mean, you're gonna run that any company.
You are,
know
you
that.
are, yeah.
I just think there, with the time restraints that we have,
Yeah, I think we're getting too far into the game.
Other
I mean,
companies
we're
can
looking
do
to
it.
ask for a millage in November.
I feel like we've utilized Navholz already, and I think that that's to go back on them and say, oh, never mind, we've used you all this time.
Well-
Now we don't want you, is wrong.
Well, keep in mind that I could have saved the school $200,000.
That's why we're using.
I could have saved the school $200,000 if we had done a hard bid process on these bathrooms. I had two contractors that would have done this job just as good as Navholz or better. They might have not been able to do 10 bathrooms in one summer. They could have done 5 or 6 and 4 or something like that. But we would have saved $200,000 using another contractor. And that's something that we could have saved $200,000 on.
in this, you know, Chad, there's an opportunity for the construction manager, once you get into the bidding process, you know, they know who the good ones are and who the bad ones are, you know. I
Well,
know-
apparently not. The epoxy was done terrible in this bathroom.
I could have missed on that one.
Maybe they won't
But
use it
no,
next
you know,
time.
I mean, it was out because I actually, Daryl asked me to go down to the bid opening with him, and there was people that were low bid that did not get the job simply because they didn't have the reputation that Navajos thought they should have.
Yeah.
And they reserved the right to negotiate with that company. If they bid $200,000 for a painting, let's say, Navajos, if there are construction men, they can bid them to, they can get,
Yeah.
they can negotiate them down to 100,000. So there's some negotiation that can take place and to get your best dollar.
Yeah.
I just think we're getting with Navajos. I mean, you know, they've done us a good job. I just think all of them are close. And another thing is the time restraint. It's gonna take some time to do this. So I remember the last process, you know, you have to advertise it, then you gotta set meeting. You're talking about a couple of month process. And I disagree with what,
Well, I mean, we're putting our eggs in one basket, and that basket is the biggest company out there for schools. And if you want to save money, you can't save money and not negotiate. I mean, that's just a terrible practice in any business or any school, is to just say, hey, you're it. That's it. That's what we're doing. We're saying you're it.
yeah, but you
And,
do have the opportunity, when they come back with a line item, and we will have.
well, we tried that with the bathroom remodel, and we said, hey, redo the painting bid. We still paid $44,000. They did not change anything, and that was a trial run for Navholz, in my opinion, because, and then they had this rough carpentry on there for $27,000 that wouldn't go away, and finally they refunded that money because I kept asking, what's this rough carpentry? What's this rough carpentry after the bill, after we already paid the bill? And finally they said, okay, we actually owe you that back.
Well,
I mean, if I had to said that,
that in itself, you know, when they come in with that line item, I mean, we're gonna have to cut it somewhere. That's where your expertise is gonna be very valuable to this board, is to point out those things, to maybe a substitute product that's a lot cheaper but still meets the requirements that we can all agree on. And I really think, you know, your expertise is gonna be very valuable to us in that process where we start line item and that stuff.
well, when we interview these candidates, they're going to give us kind of a ballpark what they think they can do the school for.
But they're
And
not, I think they said they weren't gonna be able to do that.
they can give us kind of a ballpark what they bid the last school
Well, I
for.
mean, I can give you a ballpark,
Yeah.
you know, there's nothing.
They know what they bid the last school they're built for, all these companies. They said, hey, this last one was this dollar amount. We don't know what the bids are gonna come back, but we are blessed with the lowest subcontractor cost in the entire US in this Northeast Arkansas. And so I'm optimistic that if they got one done in Jonesboro, Conway, that our price is gonna be slightly lower, because unless they're bringing somebody in from Fort Smith or Fayetteville, we should find some reputable builders in the Jonesboro, Paragould area that they've used before that can do a little less price.
Well, I remember seeing those contractors coming in here, most of them were Jonesboro area. And they tried to get some of the local, but as Jennifer mentioned to you a while ago, I think there's some liability, they couldn't meet the liability requirement.
For sure, yeah.
Such a big job. And that's always been a problem in the past. You know, we've had just a local contractor that we all know, he unfortunately passed away. He was on a bid on a project, and he just, he said, I can't do it at the timeline that y'all have to have it, because you have to do it with the kids in here. Because he didn't have the employees. Well, County of Jonesboro came in and bid it for 2 days, if they had to do it on the weekend. And I felt bad for him. He was burdened with that, he didn't have enough employees. But I really think, you know, once it comes down, you know, we start looking, the CM's not gonna tell you anything. The first part of this is contract with CM. Then you will go to a company. That's a process that takes 4 to 6 weeks for them to review it and submit their bids. Now there's where, you know, you can start talking numbers, but that's 2 months out.
Again, we need to open it up for more people. I make a recommendation that we direct the superintendent to put forth an RFQ for construction management.
Second.
That's where I would be.
I think we're wasting time with it, we'll vote on it.
We have a motion and a second to direct the superintendent to put forth an RFQ for construction management. Everybody in favor say yes. Yes. Motion failed. Everybody opposed say no.
No.
Motion failed 2 to 3.
Okay, let me catch up.
I'd like to just keep going forward, you know? Because like I say, we're running on a timeline right now. And do I think they're probably the best out there? No.
I really think.
Do I think they're the worst out there? No.
I'm gonna make a
But-
motion to continue with Navels as a construction.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to continue with Nabholz as our construction manager. Everybody in favor say yes.
Yes.
Everybody opposed say no. No. Motion passes 3 to 2.
And in that, Chad, I really think when it comes up to the line item thing, I think you're gonna be very back to us, to guys maybe some of the products out there that would get cheaper. We can't take the cost. You're gonna be very valuable to this board that we haven't had in the past. And I hope we all can work towards that goal of putting the best building up at the best price.
Okay, with that, that draws a conclusion to the action items. I would request that the board enter into executive session.
So at this time, the board's going to go into executive session for personnel reasons.
Okay.
All right, we're now back in open session. Dr. Arbuckle, do you have a recommendation on personnel?
We do. We have one item on the personnel agenda. We're recommending the hiring of Kimberly Inslee to fill the junior high librarian position for the upcoming school year.
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second to approve this new hire. Everybody in favor say yes.
Yes.
Motion passes 5 to 0.
That, unless anybody on the board's got anything else to address, that draws the end of our agenda.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Meeting adjourned.